Much of the universe knows her as Miranda, the flinty but sensible lawyer with intimacy issues on Sex and the City. To the New York theater, however, she's practically family. Welcome to Women in Theater. I'm Linda Weiner, theater critic of Newsday, and our guest is Cynthia Nixon, who made her Broadway debut at 14, co-starred in 2 simultaneous Mike Nichols hits during her freshman semester at Barnard, and won her Tony Award for playing a grown-up mom in Rabbit Hole last year. Her goal, she has said since childhood, is to be a New York theater person, respected but not mobbed. Are you mobbed now?
No, I am not mobbed.
How I would think after Sex and the City that you could no longer hide in plain sight the way.
No, I mean, certainly a lot of people breaking it, but you know, even when the show was actually on the air, when it would, because we would be off, I mean, we only made a few episodes a season, it wasn't like we were on most of the year, and when the advertising would start and the show would launch again, many people would recognize me, but once even our season was over, it would die down. And you know, my hair is back to its own color. Yeah, I was.
Did you have to be a redhead? Because
for many years.
I know that, and
years.
I couldn't figure it out. But it was because they didn't need another blonde.
Well, you know,
we're not really going to do Sex and the City, but
no, that's fine. No,
you
that's
brought
fine.
the hair. Go ahead.
That's fine. When I was 28, I think, I was in Indiscretions, and I was wearing a wig, and I had an 8-month contract, and you know, and I got nominated for Tony, which was very exciting.
And you had sex supposedly with Roger Reese and
Jude
Law, father and son.
Yes, and so the man who I went to for my hair at that time, he said, let's do something amazing for the Tonys. I was like, what can we do? Well, like, let's make your hair red. So that was when I was 28, and we did it, and it was kind of fun. And then I did a few roles, and then I got pregnant, and I let my hair go natural back to its blonde. But then someone had seen me, someone on Sex and the City, had Darren Star, I think, had seen me with the red hair, and he thought, since we already have 2 blondes, maybe we should do that. So I already had sort of played with being a redhead, and I had liked it, and so when they wanted me to do it, yeah, it was fine.
You've been doing, you know, interviews since you were 14 or something. And the 14-year-old interview, the ones from the 14-year-old, you were so grown up. You know, I don't really want to be famous, I really think. And this one was, I love this, and it has to do with the hair, too. And this was at, you're 18 already, and you're doing both Hurly-Burly and The Real Thing, which we got to that. Right. And you said, I'm a marketable type. I have blonde hair, fine cheekbones, and no New York accent.
It's true. Well, when I started, do you want to ask me something about that?
No.
When I started when I was 12, I mean, when you're a kid actor, also I was very, you know, I didn't want to presuppose too much, so I thought commercials, I'll do commercials. And this is what everybody told me. I have, even though I'm a native New Yorker, I have a kind of a Midwestern look going, you know, and so this is something I believe. But actually, it was so funny that I never really, I did some commercials, but not a lot, because as soon as I open my mouth, I'm far too eccentric to really be an Ivory girl. Yeah. So.
Okay, born and raised in Manhattan.
Yes.
Is it true that you said that for your funeral that you want them to play a tape of Judy Garland singing
I happen to like New York. I do.
I do like that.
I do.
We've just gone from childhood to funeral. It's a quick show. So how did it start? There you were, being raised mostly by your mother.
Yes.
Yeah, in the Upper West Side still? Were you still there?
Well, when my parents were together, we were on the Upper West Side, and then when they split, my mother and I, when I was about 7, we moved to Yorkville, where we lived until I went to college. So but I really, the Upper West Side, I mean, as soon as I could, I moved back there. I really, I like it better. I feel more at home there. Yeah. And at what age did... Oh, right.
Yeah.
So I guess, well, you know, my mother had been an actress, and she went to Yale Drama School, and she majored in drama in college, and she studied with Uta Hagen, and she acted for many years until she got pregnant with me.
And her name?
Her name is Ann Nixon.
Thank you.
And, but then she stopped. She decided really that she was going to stop. She wasn't having the success that she wanted, and she would stop, and she would have a baby instead, and that would be nice. So, but she took me to the theater very, very young. I mean, I think I was maybe 3 when I was going to Shakespeare in the Park.
You lucky duck.
And a lot of old movies, and she would always My mother is really very, I think, very knowledgeable about the theater, and so we wouldn't just go to see these things, but then we would, very much like a critic, we would dissect them afterwards, and we would talk about what we liked and how intriguingly they had done this, or if it hadn't worked, why hadn't it worked, and what could they have done differently. Partly like a dramaturg, and partly like a critic of acting styles too. So it's really hard to know. I think when I was a kid, maybe 8, she took me and a photographer took some pictures, and maybe I would do some modeling, but I lost a tooth and it never really happened. And, you know, there were various little kind of skirmishes. My mother worked for To Tell the Truth,
the
game show, and I was on that a few times, you know. But
Gary Moore.
Gary Moore. But it wasn't until I was about 11 that I ran into a friend of hers who was a director who was looking for a girl to put in a movie he was trying to get financed of a children's novel. And I went and I read, and he thought I read well, and his son was about my age and had a manager, and he set me up and put me in an industrial film that he was shooting for the American Cancer Society. And then I had a manager, and I just started going out on auditions, and I started working almost immediately. So.
And by the time you were 14, you were co-starring with Blythe Danner.
Yes, I started peculiarly in film, and I did film and TV, and then
you did Little Darlings?
I did Little Darlings, I did after-school specials, I did some Prince of the City and a bunch of movies and stuff. And then, 12 to 14, it doesn't sound like a lot, but at the time, it seemed like an eternity. And then finally, at 14...
Finally,
my Broadway debut, yes.
In Philadelphia Story.
Yes, yeah, with Blythe Danner.
Uh-huh. Okay. And you played Juliet by the time you were 22. You were actually like almost of the age to do Juliet. How did that feel to be doing Shakespeare with Joe Papp after being brought to Shakespeare in the Park as a child?
Well, I have to tell you that when I was 14 and when I did the Philadelphia Story with Blythe Danner, Ellis Rabb directed it, and he kept saying to me, over and over and over again, you were 14, you must play Juliet. Juliet was 14. And he actually once invited me to his home, and we tried to go over some of the script, but he's a man of many theater stories, so we really didn't get very far. But we worked on the first scene at least. But he really put this idea in my head that I really had to play Juliet because I was 14. And so I went home and I spent a lot of time reading it and really memorizing it. And I auditioned for every ingenue from the age of 14 to 21 when I played Juliet. I auditioned for, Ophelia and Miranda and every Shakespeare ingenue there was, and I didn't get any of them. But then Juliet, like the best one to get, came along, and I got it. And I think it was because Ellis Rabb had said to me 7 years before, you must play Juliet, and I had, in my clumsy way, but still I was very familiar with it by the time I got in there for the audition.
And you were wonderful. I can still remember that look on your face in the crypt. Please. You have to be careful. People are watching you. You may think that you're being able to ride on the bus, but people watch you. So you do ride the buses, and
I do, the bus and the subway every day.
And shop at Whole Foods by yourself, and and your two children go to public schools?
My daughter goes to public school. My son is still in a private preschool, but he'll start kindergarten in a public school next year.
So who told you could be a regular person?
Well, I just
Isn't that supposed to be against?
Well, I don't know. I just sort of kept doing the thing that I had always done, and I guess I was raised in a sort of, we had enough money, but we didn't have a lot. We lived in a 5-floor walk-up, and I don't know, I was just raised with this ethic of, you kind of put your money away. You don't really pay it out all the time. So.
And you paid your way through Barnard.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was very expensive.
English Lit.
English Lit.
Final thesis?
I did 2, actually. I did... I did an easy one and a hard one.
Which one was Gertrude Stein?
Gertrude Stein was the hard one.
I thought so.
I had never read any Gertrude Stein. I thought, let's pick something really, really, really difficult. And I didn't pick a very hard work of hers. I picked 3 Lives, which isn't so hard. But and I also did Harper Lee for my easy one, because I love that book.
I know that you've told the story 100,000 times, but it is still such a good story that before we move on to life, the time you were simultaneously in Hurly Burly and The Real Thing.
Right. So I auditioned for The Real Thing that Mike Nichols was directing.
So this was 1983, 4?
1983, the fall of 1983. And I got it, and we went out of town to Boston, and we were a hit. We brought it into Broadway, Jeremy Irons, Glenn Close. And we opened on Broadway. We were a big hit. It was so great.
You were their daughter.
I was his daughter from his first marriage.
Yes.
And so then Mike Nichols gave me a script and said, I'm doing this new play, you know, and you would have to leave right away, but it's really wonderful. And I read it, and it was an amazing script, an amazing part, and it had William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, Christopher Walken, Harvey Keitel, Jerry Stiller, Judith Ivey, and me. Like I'm the punchline of the joke. And I said,
and you were this Midwest hitchhiking waif.
This poor waif, yes, who kind of living on the streets. The total opposite of the real thing part, which was a precocious British daughter of privilege who sasses her playwright father and is as good at word games as he is. You know, very educated, very uneducated, lots of opportunity, no opportunity. Very British, very, you know, Midwest. So we did it we took it out of town to Chicago to do it at the Goodman with that amazing cast. We were a hit in Chicago. We took it out of town. Brought it back into New York, off Broadway to the Promenade Theater. We were a big hit. Christopher Walken left and Ron Silver came in, and then we moved to Broadway. And Mike had always joked that I could do both of these parts because they were very juicy parts, but they were very, you know, they weren't in a lot of the play. And Yardley Smith, who's the voice of the Simpson girl, had been my understudy in The Real Thing and had taken over for me when I left to do Hurly Burly. And then she, right around the same time, was leaving to do a movie. And we were all, Mike Nichols had directed Whoopi Goldberg's first show at that point, and it was a one-woman show, and she had no cast to hang out with. So we used to, a couple of times, he got together the Hurly Burly people to go out with Whoopi. And at one of these after theater gatherings, I said to him, you know, we now actually could do that. I could do both of these parts, because they're both on Broadway. They're 2 blocks away from each other. I'm in the first act of one, the second act of the other, then third act of the first one. And he said, well, let's do it.
And you were there for the curtain calls on each one.
I was there for the curtain calls on each one.
2 blocks away.
2 blocks away.
You can't do that now, right? Did Equity make a law? Is that the Cynthia Nixon law?
I think, I mean, no one's ever shown it to me in the books, so I don't actually know that it exists, but I have been told by many people that there is a law in the books, you can't do it. And when we did it at the time, of course it was a tremendous publicity stunt, but the only way that Equity would allow us to do it at that time was they hired 2 understudies for The Real Thing, so there would technically not be an actor put out of work. It
wasn't because they thought it was child abuse. It was because they thought that you were taking too many jobs away from.
Right.
Yeah. When you're choosing roles now, do you consciously sort of find the anti-Miranda? I mean, are you looking for things that will define you outside of what people expect from you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I guess Miranda, you know, she is a very specific character at a very specific time and place. So I certainly do look for anti-Miranda roles, but they're not hard to find. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Unless you're being hired by someone who's just trying to capitalize on that, the chances of getting a Miranda role are not that great. You know, I mean, you could say Miss Jean Brodie is very brainy, the way Miranda is very brainy. You could say Eleanor Roosevelt is very brainy. You know, they have a certain braininess, but other than that, they're very, very different, the roles that I've tried to take afterwards.
We're taping this in December of 2006. You're just closing.
We've just, on Saturday, so 2 days ago, we closed The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, a role, you know, defined by, you know, divadom by Vanessa Redgrave and Maggie Smith and, you know, Zoe Caldwell,
Fiona Shaw.
And very different kind of role for you.
Very different from anything I've ever done.
Did you find that there was some resistance not from me, but from some of my colleagues?
Yes, I haven't read them yet. I'm going to read them soon, but I'm not looking forward to it. But
just some resistance to being able to see you in a role of that weight, and to see you sort of develop as a bad person, really.
I'm also I'm 40, and I'm a little bit younger, I think, than people who've played it. So I don't know if that was a factor, too. But yeah, I guess she's also, I mean, she's very dangerous. She's very dangerous. I don't usually play dangerous people much. So it was one of the main things that appealed to me about doing it. I mean, other than the fact that it's a great role and I really wanted to work with Scott Elliott. But I thought, if someone is really going to push me to be dangerous, Scott Elliott is the person who's going to.
Do you find, I mean, when I saw Miss Jean Brodie, I thought, you know, a mainstream, huge female role like that, those are hard to find. You know, that commercial that people know. Is it hard?
To find those roles?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's bravura kind of.
Well, I mean, there are so few roles that are bravura roles like that role. I mean, I have to say, great roles are always hard to find, but the nice thing about theater roles is once you have a great one, it stays around. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Scarlett O'Hara has been played, and it probably won't be played again. Do you know what I mean? But Phaedra, everyone will try and do it in every generation. You know.
So, do you think forward on, you know, Martha and Virginia Woolf?
Oh, I've always wanted to play Martha, but I don't think I'm a Martha.
They always want to make you Honey, right?
Martha, yes, and I have played Honey, and I love playing Honey. I am not a Martha, but I always secretly would love to play Martha, but I'm not a Martha.
Do you want to do more Shakespeare?
I have never done any Shakespeare since I did the Juliet. Absolutely, I would love to do more Shakespeare. I would love to do more Shakespeare. I mean, again, like, I would love to do Cleopatra, but I'm not a Cleopatra.
Well, you could be your own.
I know. I don't think so.
No. I know that that you always, you know, there was a quote about, you know, if people, the way to not be chased is to stop, and then they'll, you know, just don't run.
Right.
And they won't chase you.
Right.
I know you found yourself, like, in the tabloids with personal life.
Right.
How horrible was that?
Well, it was kind of crazy, but it was also, I mean, it is just that. I mean, in my experience, everybody has different, you know, but in my experience, yeah, if you just say, yes, this is what's happening, yes.
Yeah.
Then there's no more story. Do you know what I mean? And it's also, it's like riding on the subway. It's like, yeah, I'm just going about my life. You want to snap me on the subway? That's fine. I ride the subway, and I'm a mom, and my hair isn't done, and that's fine. And, like, you can take one picture, and you could take 3 pictures, and then after a while, is that interesting to anybody anymore? That's the way I look in my life. That's true.
So to just finish that, is that the father of your children you had known since you were in grade school? 13.
Yeah.
And then shortly after Sex and the City, you fell in love with a woman.
Yeah, after he and I had split up.
After he had split up, you had split up.
Yeah.
And that sort of, like, you know, probably wouldn't have been a big deal, except that you're one of the glamour
Right. Well, I think also
Sex and the City.
I think also the Sex and the City girls are so they were seen as so archetypal, not and also archetypal, but also very kind of what's happening now.
Yeah.
So it wasn't sort of like I had decided to be with a woman. It was like one of them had decided, you know, and it was like a trend in America or something, which I don't really think it is, you know. So it's you can't, you know, people really, I have never, of course I think television really does that, but I have never had a role where people really identify you with that character so much and want you to be, you know, before, I mean, my character eventually had a kid on the show, but before I did, when I had my daughter and people would see me in the playground with my daughter and they would say the funniest things to me, they would be just so confused that I couldn't have a daughter, you know, I couldn't have a child.
Miranda doesn't have a baby.
Miranda doesn't have a, you know, Miranda's not interested in children, you know. So.
Your children are how old?
My daughter is 10 and my son is about to be 4.
And you think, are they starstruck?
A little. I mean, not my son doesn't really understand. My son, you know, I was walking down the street with him the other day, and we passed this person who said, "I love you," and I said, "Thank you," and my son said, "Who was that?" And I said, "I don't know," you know, and he really doesn't know what to make of it. Although he does sort of understand that he sees my picture on posters sometimes, and he's now decided that I'm Katie Couric. That he sees Katie Couric on buses, and he says, "It's Mommy."
And since you don't have a TV,
Yes, we don't. Yes,
this is probably more unusual than anything else in your life.
I think you're right. And this is the true controversy in my life.
This is the freak part of you know. Yes, 12 years old, she was a star, but no television.
Well, we have, I shouldn't say no television, we do have a set, but we don't have cable, so we really get no reception. We get Fox, that's all we get.
Oh, bless you.
So we watched our election returns on Fox through all the fuzz.
Very scary.
But we watch, you know, tapes and videos and that kind of thing.
Are you still taking singing lessons?
I am. I had to stop for the last month of my play because there was too much. But yes, I am. I'm going to go back this week.
I was at that public theater gala where you sang looks
Dance 10,
Dance 10 Looks 3, and you were really fun.
Thank you. I used to do it in my living room when I was 10, so it was fun. It was fun.
You know, I mean, most people who've been in, you know, a theater a long time, and if I say, you know, how's it different? How's it changed over the years? And it's hard to ask somebody who's, you know, still so young.
No,
but
I've seen very big changes.
If you had to say, like, the 2 or 3 big changes, biggest things that have changed in New York theater.
Well, I mean, it's certainly how expensive it is. That's a very big deal. But even that is part of, not that I'm an expert on the movie business, but it seems to me that the same thing is happening in the movie business and in the theater, and I think it's kind of happening, I know it's happening in academia, where the superstars get paid enormous amounts of money, and the supporting players, the salaries have not moved. It's the way they play. They pay, you know, star professors enormous amounts of money, and then, you know, 2/3 of the work of the teaching of the regular classes is done by adjuncts who don't even earn a living wage. I mean, that's certainly in the movies. We see that all the time, where you have a movie starring a $10 or a $20 million actor, and then everybody else, no one else's salaries are moving up. They're kind of where they were, and in some cases they're even down. But I would say also in the theater, one of the main differences to me is how long shows run now. And how there is, like in the movie business, there is this, let's roll the dice and let's see if we can hit the jackpot. You know, let's see if we can have the show that will run for 5, 10, 20 years. Yeah. You know, so partly because there is this high stakes gambling going on, there is less chance to try on a middle show. You know, not a, you know, not something in a basement for 5 cents, and not something for $20 million, but like, let's just try and do a play.
Theater. Yeah.
Let's just do a play.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And partly that's not possible because so many of the theaters are taken now by these shows that will run forever.
Yeah, yeah. So it becomes a theme park,
and it becomes a brand item that people from all over the world recognize that brand. They know that Phantom of the Opera. They know that Cats. They know that Les
And
Miserables.
so Chorus Line is back because, you know, I'm going to Broadway.
It's a recognizable brand, right?
Yes.
They don't know what a delicate balance is. They don't go see it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So. Now you were one of the founders of the drama department.
The drama department.
With an off-Broadway, very, very interesting collective.
Yeah.
That sort of we haven't heard very much about.
Well, you know, we were gonna. You know, I probably shouldn't say, but we were actually closing our doors. We're going to come back this year, but Mike Rosenberg, who's been our managing director for years, has gotten a wonderful job, and Douglas Carter Bean didn't want to run it without him. And frankly, Doug has so many projects of his own now.
Yeah.
So
yes.
So yeah, we were about to start up production again this season, but I think we're going to call it quits. So we're going to have a big party and say we did good. And,
you did good.
And you know, it's the end of an era for us.
But then that is sort of something else that's changed. You decided, let's put on our own show because people won't put on our shows. And
exactly.
Then
I mean, in some way,
you
know, in some way, like, you know, Circle Repertory, you know, was founded to bring the works of Lanford Wilson to the world. And they did that, and they also brought, you know, a myriad of other amazing playwrights and designers and actors, but, you know, that's, you know.
What is it, a Duane Reade now or something? I think.
Something.
Yeah, every time I ride by there, because I think all those wonderful theaters.
Yeah.
But there are others.
Yeah.
There are others. So is there a plan right now, or?
No, you know, I just am really just taking a break. I've done so much theater this year, you know, between Rabbit Hole and Miss Jean Brodie. It was just a lot. And it's also, now that when I used to do theater when my daughter was little and was home all day with me, it wasn't such a big deal to go out at night. But now when my kids are in school a lot of the day and they have after-school activities, and then to have me out at the theater at night, it's really different. So I'm not going to do any theater for a while, I think.
Oh. You didn't take any acting lessons for the first 16 years of your career,
right,
young lady.
Yes, I did.
We have almost no time, but can we please discuss?
I had no time.
And obviously no need. No?
Well, no, I think everyone needs to do that. I think it's helpful at whatever stage of your career you're in. It's always helpful to go into the shop, but I was working so hard to try and maintain a normal childhood and try and make sure that my academics didn't suffer. There was certainly no time for any more classes, other than math and social studies and English. So.
Well, we forgive you.
Thank you.
I think, keep up your studies. Someday you will really have a career.
Thank you.
If you work really, really hard. Thank you. You probably don't even know this. This is something that you said when you were 14. You're very mature 14-year-old. And that you said, I think that the important thing is to go to a good school with good people and to grow up normally.
Yes.
You knew that at 14.
Yes, I think I did. I think I did because I was in such a good school. I went to Hunter College High School, and it was such a good school, and it had such good people, and I'm friends with so many of those people still.
And you grew up normally.
And I grew up normally,
which is
knock on wood.
Thank you very much. Cynthia Nixon, thank you for coming and being normal here.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. On behalf of the League of Professional Theater Women, I'm Linda Weiner, and this has been Women in Theater.